worked until the anger built up and spilled over onto those around me. "Why are you always acting out, Lecrae?" my mom often asked me after I'd gotten in trouble. I shrugged my shoulders like I didn't know. But deep down, I did know the source of it all. Underneath all my pain and misbehavior was a sense of emptiness. After my mom and I escaped my dad's instability, he decided to stay away. And the hole left by my father's absence throbbed constantly, like an open wound that refused to scab over. On a lazy Saturday, my mind would sometimes flood with questions. Where is my dad right now? Is he thinking of me too? If so, why doesn't he find me? Why doesn't he at least call me? Countless questions, zero answers. Sitting in class with my elbow propped up on my desk and my head leaning against the palm of my hand, I stare out the window and begin to daydream about what it'd be like to have a dad around. My imagination filled the hole my father left with romanticized versions of what I thought he'd be like. Lying in bed at night before I fall asleep, I'd picture my dad showing up and making our family complete. I could almost hear the knock at the door and could almost see the door swing open. My heart rate increased as I imagined him walking into our home and fixing our problems. He was an absentee father, struggling with addiction. But in my young mind, he was a superhero. He had the power to swoop in and save the day, to save me from my confusion and frustration and woes, if he wanted to. I mostly held it together during the waking hours. After playing in the neighborhood when a man's voice would call a friend of mine home for dinner, I wished it were my dad calling my name, but I wouldn't let others know. On occasion, when no one was around, I would shatter like a window pane and break down. Tears, tears, and more tears. Telling my mom, I want to live with my dad. Asking her where he went and why didn't he want to be with us. She would try to offer answers that painted a dignified picture of him, but it never satisfied. The years rolled on, but the pain never disappeared. I mourned my dad's absence and yearned for his presence. Every child wants and needs a father. Mine didn't want anything to do with me. No phone calls, no birthday cards, no arm on the shoulder after a bad day at school. Actually, one call and one card. I'm not the only kid to grow up with this pain. Millions of fatherless children in America struggle with this reality. The loneliness, the missing person in the stands when they finally hit the home run, the pain of watching their mother struggle to bear the burden of a two-person job, the sinking feeling when the sun rises and sets on yet another Father's Day. And of course, the hundreds of aching, unanswered questions that leave them wanting to scream, how come he don't want me? Like Will in that famous scene from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air after his deadbeat dad leaves again. I've heard people say that the traumas from our childhoods follow us into adulthood. That's certainly true for me. If you could trace my life's biggest struggles back to their origin, most of them would lead to a childhood version of me wrestling with my father's absence. Even when I wasn't rebelling or having an emotional breakdown, there was a dull, throbbing sense of rejection and abandonment. Because I felt like my dad valued drugs more than having me as a son, I've constantly wrestled with my self-worth and craved the approval of others. Because I thought that the person who should have found me easy to love didn't, I wondered if I was worthy of love, period. Because he didn't consider me reason enough to stay, I've always felt like a disappointment to others. Because my dad's non-existence stirred up so much anger, my temper flared and hurt those around me. And because I lacked a consistent male role model in my life, I had no idea what it meant to be a man. In the swirling pain of abandonment and insignificance, I searched for someone, anyone I could look up to. My cousins and uncles filled this role somewhat, as the only older males in my life. They were my surrogate role models, but no one filled in the cracks completely. They were more like pieces of a composite dad. Each had their strengths. My Uncle Keith, for example. He was an introverted like me and passionate about music. He introduced me to reggae and was always introducing me to new artists. Together we would listen to Yellow Man and Marley and all kinds of records for hours on end. My Uncle Ricky was stylish and creative and taught me how to be well-groomed. He was always encouraging and affirming, and he actually enjoyed spending time with me. We looked alike,